Ethan stared at the massive interstellar cruiser docked in orbit around Earth. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Smooth silver panels reflected the light of distant stars, and the hum of its energy core could be felt even from the docking bay. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. A human engineer aboard an alien warship. This was a rare honor, but it also came with a challenge he could not yet imagine. Ethan had been chosen for his reputation as one of Earth's best engineers. He had repaired ships, satellites, and experimental spacecraft that other humans had given up on. Yet this was different. This was no Earth ship. This was a vessel built by the Arathians, one of the most advanced and disciplined species in the galaxy. And the commander of the ship was Commander Lyria, a woman, or rather, an alien of humanoid form, known across multiple systems for her strictness and sharp mind. As he walked into the ship's main corridor, the doors hissed open with a soft mechanical sound. Aliens of different species passed by, many taller than him, some covered in scales, others with bioluminescent skin. Each seemed focused on their tasks. Ethan tried to hide his awe, keeping his hands at his sides and moving with purpose. "Welcome, human," said a tall, thin Arathian officer. His voice had a melodic rhythm that sounded almost like singing. "Commander Lyria will see you shortly. For now, report to the maintenance decks and familiarize yourself with the ship's systems." Ethan nodded, swallowing his nervousness. "Yes, sir. I'll start immediately." As he followed the officer, he noticed the efficiency of the crew. Every alien moved with precise timing, communicating in soft tones. There was no chaos, no shouting, only the sound of coordinated activity. It was impressive but intimidating. When he reached the maintenance decks, Ethan's training kicked in. He inspected panels, checked energy conduits, and ran diagnostics. Everything was advanced, far beyond human technology, yet the principles of engineering remained the same. His human intuition allowed him to spot inefficiencies in the system that even the Arathian crew had missed. Hours passed. Ethan barely noticed as he worked through the ship's complex systems. Finally, a voice called out over the intercom. "Engineer Ethan, report to the command deck." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment he would meet Commander Lyria. He straightened his uniform and walked toward the command deck. The doors opened, revealing a vast room filled with holographic displays and control stations. And there she was. Lyria stood tall, her posture perfect. Her skin was a soft shade of silver blue and her eyes glowed faintly like distant stars. Her hair, or what humans would call hair, was long and seemed to shimmer with every movement. She did not look at him. She was focused on a holographic display, analyzing what seemed like battle simulations. "Commander Lyria," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am Engineer Ethan, assigned to assist with your ship's systems." She did not respond immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the display. Ethan waited, unsure if silence was a test or if she had simply not noticed him. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm and controlled. "Your skills have been noted. Begin work on the secondary energy conduits. The main power flow is unstable and requires immediate attention." It was a command, not a greeting. Ethan nodded and quickly made his way to the secondary conduits. He could feel the eyes of the crew on him as he worked, curious about the human who had been placed on their ship. Some whispered in low tones, "Interesting, a human, so persistent." Others seemed skeptical, watching every movement as if expecting a mistake. The first day passed in a blur of work. Ethan repaired circuits, recalibrated energy fields, and adjusted flow regulators. He was exhausted but satisfied with his progress. Yet Lyria never acknowledged him personally. She gave commands, observed results, but never spoke a word beyond the mission. By the second day, Ethan began to feel the strain of being ignored. Other crew members had started to notice small gestures from Lyria, quick nods or approving glances, but Ethan received nothing. It was as if he was invisible, a human anomaly aboard a vessel built for aliens. During a short break, Ethan wandered to the observation deck. He looked out at the stars, feeling small in the vastness of space. The Earth below was just a pale blue dot, reminding him of the world he had left behind. He had expected to be welcomed, to prove himself quickly, but instead he felt the cold weight of indifference. He did not dwell on it long. Engineers did not succeed by feeling sorry for themselves. He returned to the conduits, determined to complete his tasks. Hours later, a sudden alert sounded. The energy flow in one of the primary reactors was fluctuating dangerously. Alarms echoed through the deck. Ethan sprang into action, analyzing the readings. The reactor was at risk of shutting down, which could paralyze the ship in orbit. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he adjusted energy matrices, rerouted auxiliary power, and carefully balanced the conduits. Time seemed to stretch. One wrong move could be catastrophic. Finally, the readings stabilized. Ethan exhaled, relieved. The crew gave a quiet murmur of approval, but Lyria remained silent, watching the systems intently. After several tense moments, she turned slightly, her glowing eyes meeting his. It was not a smile, not even a nod, just a brief flicker of acknowledgement. "Efficient," she said. The word was soft but carried weight. Ethan felt a spark of hope. It was the first sign that she had noticed him, that she recognized his skill. Over the next few days, Ethan settled into a rhythm. He repaired damaged systems, optimized energy flow, and even improved some processes the alien engineers had struggled with. Yet Lyria remained distant. She gave orders, evaluated results, but never spoke directly to him beyond what was necessary. Ethan began to overhear whispers among the crew. They spoke of Lyria's reputation, of her fearsome dedication to duty, and of her rare ability to notice even the smallest details. One officer said quietly, "No one earns her respect easily. You must prove yourself, human." Ethan understood. Respect was not given freely in this ship. It had to be earned through action, through courage and intelligence. He was determined to earn it, even if it meant working long hours with no recognition. Late one night, while inspecting the energy conduits, Ethan discovered a minor flaw in the reactor's cooling system, a flaw that could have caused serious damage if left unchecked. He worked carefully to fix it, his hands moving with precision and speed. By the time he finished, the first rays of light from a distant star illuminated the deck. Lyria appeared silently behind him. Ethan jumped slightly, surprised by her presence. She studied the repaired system, her glowing eyes scanning every detail. "You noticed the flaw?" she said finally. "Few would have caught it." Ethan nodded, unsure what to say. I just did what any engineer would do." "Few humans are capable of thinking like that under pressure," Lyria replied. Then, without another word, she turned and left. Ethan watched her go, a strange mix of pride and confusion swirling inside him. She had spoken to him, not in kindness, not in friendship, but in recognition. That night, Ethan lay in his quarters thinking about the strange and distant commander. He did not know what to expect from her, but he knew one thing: he would not give up. He would prove himself worthy, not for recognition, but because that was who humans were. Adaptable, persistent, and capable of surprising even the most disciplined alien minds. As the ship continued its silent journey through the stars, Ethan felt the weight of his new life settling on his shoulders. He was alone in a world of aliens, ignored by the very person who commanded the ship, yet he could feel the first small crack in the ice of indifference. A challenge lay ahead, a challenge that would test his skill, his courage, and perhaps in ways he could not yet imagine, his heart. The first part of his journey had begun. The next day began with bright lights over the Siluri capital. From his guest chamber, Captain Daniel Hale looked out at the city below. Towers of glass and crystal reflected the morning sun, and flying vessels moved like birds between them. It was a sight few humans had ever seen, and Daniel felt grateful. Yet his thoughts were not on the city or the official meetings. His mind returned again and again to the maid he had seen crying. Her golden eyes, her soft words, "I cannot say. It is forbidden." Daniel felt certain that her sorrow was not something small. Something important weighed on her, and he could not stop thinking that it might even be tied to the Queen herself. When the human delegation gathered in the Grand Hall, Daniel stayed quiet, letting the ambassadors do their work. They spoke of trade, peace, and future cooperation. The Siluri Queen sat on her high throne, calm and regal, her presence commanding respect. Daniel's eyes, however, wandered to the side of the hall. There, standing behind the Queen with other attendants, was the same maid. Her face was composed, her posture perfect. She looked almost like a statue, no sign of tears, no sign of weakness. Daniel almost wondered if he had imagined it all. But when her eyes flickered toward him for the briefest moment, he saw it. The sadness was still there, hidden but alive. After the meeting, Daniel found a quiet chance to slip away. He moved through the palace halls, pretending to admire the art on the walls, but truly waiting. He hoped fate might allow him another meeting with her, and fate did. In a smaller garden hall filled with floating flowers, he found her again. She was tending to one of the glowing plants, her delicate fingers brushing its petals. When she noticed him, her eyes widened slightly, but she did not run this time. "You again," she whispered. Daniel gave a small nod. "Yes, and I hope I'm not disturbing you." The maid hesitated, then shook her head. "You should not speak to me. If others see, they may ask questions." "Then let us speak quietly," Daniel said with a smile. "I only want to understand. Yesterday, I saw your tears. I cannot forget them." Her eyes softened, though worry still clouded them. She looked down at the glowing flower in her hands. "You are human. You do not know our ways, then teach me." Daniel replied, "I came here to learn about your people, not only your technology or your buildings. If there is something I should know, I will listen." For a long time she was silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the garden and the distant song of Solari birds. Finally she whispered, "My name is Lyra." Daniel smiled warmly. "Lyra, a beautiful name." She looked at him with surprise, as if no one had spoken her name with such care before. Then she sighed. "I cannot tell you everything, but I can say this. The queen is not as free as she appears. Her crown is heavy, heavier than any jewel, and those who serve her, we carry part of that weight." Daniel leaned closer, his voice soft.
"That is why you cried?"
Lyra's hands tightened around the flower. "We are bound by duty. We must be silent shadows carrying what she cannot show, but sometimes the silence becomes too much." Daniel felt a chill. He had suspected something, but now he saw the truth was larger. The queen, though mighty, might be trapped in her own rule, and her maids carried that unseen sorrow. "But why?" Daniel asked gently. "Why must you carry it? Why not let her speak her own pain?" Lyra shook her head firmly. "It is forbidden by our tradition. A queen must never show weakness. She must be a symbol of perfection to her people. If she falters, they will lose hope. So as we are chosen to bear it for her. We weep when she cannot. We grieve when she must smile." Daniel's heart ached. He thought of human leaders. Many had suffered under pressure, but at least they had been able to cry, to shout, to be human. But here was a queen who could never show her heart. "That is not fair," Daniel said softly. "Even a queen is still a person." Lyra looked at him with sad eyes. "In our empire, she is not seen as a person. She is seen as the eternal crown, the endless flame. To admit she feels sorrow would be to break the belief of millions." Daniel fell silent. He had no easy answer. Yet something in him stirred. The human belief that strength was not the absence of weakness, but the courage to share it. Lyra's eyes searched his face. "You should not care so much. You are only a visitor here. Why risk yourself?" Daniel gave a small laugh. "Because I am human. And humans, we cannot walk away when we see someone in pain. At least I cannot." For the first time, a faint smile touched Lyra's lips. It was brief, fragile, but real. "You are strange," she said softly. "Perhaps," Daniel admitted. "But maybe strange is what you need." Their talk was cut short by the sound of footsteps. Lyra quickly straightened, placing the glowing flower back in its place. A fellow maid appeared at the end of the hall, and Daniel knew the moment had ended. Before leaving, Lyra whispered, "Do not speak of this to anyone." "Promise me," Daniel nodded firmly. "I promise." That night, Daniel returned to his chamber with a heavy mind. He opened his digital log again and wrote, "Today I learned the first piece of the secret. The queen does not weep. She cannot. Her maids carry her sorrow hidden in silence. Lyra, one of them, spoke to me in whispers. Their lives are not their own. They are the vessel of another's pain. How strange and how tragic, that the brightest crown must hide the darkest shadow." He paused, thinking of her eyes and the weight she carried. Then he wrote, "If this is true, then the queen is not only the strongest ruler in the galaxy, she is also the loneliest. I wonder, what would happen if someone told her she does not need to hide? Perhaps that is the gift humanity can give, the courage to be seen." Daniel closed his log, but his heart was restless. He did not know what dangers might come if he continued to seek the truth. But he also knew this. He could not stop now. For in the tears of one maid, he had found a secret that could change not only a queen, but an entire empire. And the journey to uncover it had only just begun. The following days passed with slow rhythm inside the Solari Palace. Official meetings continued, full of words about trade, peace, and alliance. The ambassadors worked hard, smiling and shaking hands while the Queen listened with calm dignity. But Daniel Hale's thoughts were elsewhere. He was polite at the meetings, but his heart and mind kept returning to Lyra, the maid who had whispered pieces of truth to him. Every time he saw her in the background, standing silent behind the Queen, he noticed the quiet sadness in her eyes. One evening, after the long hours of ceremony, Daniel walked alone through the garden halls again. He hoped, almost prayed, that Lyra might appear. And she did. She was seated on a stone bench beneath a floating tree whose branches glowed softly in the night air. She seemed deep in thought, her face turned upward as if asking the stars for answers. When she noticed Daniel, she did not rise in alarm this time. Instead, she gave him a small nod as if she had been waiting. "You came," she whispered. Daniel smiled gently. "Yes, I promised I would listen if you wished to speak." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The garden lights shimmered and strange birds sang low songs. Then Lyra lowered her gaze. "I have thought much about you," she said. "You are different from others. You see things that are not meant to be seen, and you do not look away." Daniel sat across from her, leaning forward. "Maybe that is what humans do best. We notice the hidden. We ask why." Her lips trembled as if she fought with herself. Finally, she spoke in a voice heavy with weight. "You wish to know why I cried? You wish to know the truth behind our Queen's sorrow?" Daniel nodded softly. "Only if you trust me. Only if speaking helps you." Lyra closed her eyes as though gathering courage. When she opened them again, they shone with quiet pain. "Our Queen is strong. To her people, she is the flame that never fades. But strength has a price. She is forbidden from sharing her heart. She cannot laugh freely. She cannot weep openly. She cannot even show fear. To her people, she must appear eternal, perfect, unbroken." Daniel's chest tightened. "That must be a lonely life." "It is worse," Lyra whispered. "The Queen feels everything just as we do. Her heart carries grief, doubt, and longing, but she cannot show it. So she gave it to us, the maids. We are her shadows. When she feels sorrow, we bear it. When she feels pain, we carry it. We are the vessel of what she cannot reveal." Daniel's brows furrowed. "But how? How can you carry another's pain?" Lyra looked at her hands, pale under the garden light. "It is our bond. Long ago, our ancestors created a tradition. The Queen surrounds herself with chosen servants. Through ritual and vow, we take her hidden feelings as our own. Not fully, not completely, but enough. When her heart aches, we feel the tears. When her spirit breaks, we weep in her place." Daniel was silent. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it made his heart ache. The thought of one person forced to live as a perfect statue while others carried her sorrow. It felt wrong. "And so," Lyra continued, her voice trembling, "we are always near her. To the people, we are simple attendants, but in truth, we are her secret mirror. When she cannot cry, we do. When she must smile, we hide the pain she cannot show. That is why you saw me that day." The Queen had faced something heavy, something she could not reveal in the hall. I bore it, and it became too much. Daniel leaned back slowly, his mind heavy with the weight of her words. "You live not only your own life, but hers as well." "Yes," Lyra said softly. "We live her silence. We breathe her hidden sorrow. And yet we must never speak of it, never admit it. For if the people knew, they would believe the Queen weak, and weakness in the crown could break the empire." Daniel shook his head. "But that is not weakness. To feel sorrow, to feel pain, that is what makes one alive. Hiding it does not make strength. It only builds walls." Lyra looked at him with wide eyes as if no one had ever spoken such words to her. "In our world," she whispered, "your words would be called dangerous. But as they sound true." Daniel gave a gentle smile. "Humans have learned this the hard way. Many of our leaders tried to hide their hearts. They pretended they were perfect. But the silence crushed them. The people lost faith not when they showed feeling, but when they broke under the weight of hiding it." Lyra's lips parted, her breath catching. "You speak of another way. A way where the Queen could be both ruler and herself." "Exactly," Daniel said. "A crown does not erase a heart. To lead is not to be flawless, it is to be honest, to share the burden with others." For a long moment, neither spoke. The garden seemed to hold its breath, the glowing branches swaying gently in the still air. Then Lyra whispered, "You make it sound so simple. Yet for us, it is unthinkable." "Maybe it is only unthinkable until someone thinks it," Daniel replied softly. Her eyes shone with something new, not just sadness but hope. Fragile, uncertain hope. "But if you speak of this," she warned quickly, "it could be dangerous. The Queen's Council would never allow such ideas. They guard the tradition as if it were the Empire itself." "I understand," Daniel said. "I will not speak where it brings harm, but I will not stop believing. And neither should you." Lyra lowered her head, whispering, "You do not know how much you have already changed me. To hear that another way is possible, it makes the wait easier, if only for a moment." Daniel felt warmth in his chest. He had not solved anything yet, but he had given her a gift, a glimpse of a future not bound by silence. As the night deepened, Lyra rose from the bench. "I must go," she said quietly. "If others see me here too long, they will question." Daniel stood as well. "Thank you for trusting me. I will keep your secret safe." Before she left, she looked at him once more. "Perhaps you are right, Daniel Hale. Perhaps strength is not hiding sorrow. Perhaps strength is sharing it." Then she was gone, her figure disappearing into the silver halls. Daniel stood alone in the garden, his heart full of questions. What could one human do in the heart of such an ancient empire? Could he truly help a queen who carried the weight of millions? That night, back in his chamber, Daniel wrote in his log, "Lyra has told me the truth. The queen cannot show her heart. Her sorrow becomes the sorrow of her servants. They are bound by tradition, living as vessels for what she cannot reveal. I cannot imagine such a life. Strength built on silence, happiness sacrificed for an image of perfection. Yet I also see hope. For Lyra, a single idea has changed everything. That sorrow shared is not weakness but strength. If she can believe this, perhaps one day the queen can too." He closed the log with a heavy sigh, looking out at the stars. "The question is not if I should act. The question is how. For if I do nothing, the queen remains alone. But if I act unwisely, I may bring danger upon those who already suffer." Daniel leaned back, his eyes fixed on the endless night sky. Somewhere in those stars, hope waited. And perhaps, just perhaps, it had begun tonight, with a whisper in a garden between a human explorer and a maid who carried the sorrow of a queen. The grand throne room of the Solari Palace was filled with light. Crystals above glowed like captured stars, and the queen sat high upon her silver throne. Her golden eyes were calm, her posture perfect. Around her stood advisors, guards, and attendants, each one silent and respectful. Captain Daniel Hale stood among the human delegation, watching. The ambassadors spoke of agreements and alliances. They praised the Solari Empire, spoke of trade routes, and promised cooperation. The queen listened with her usual grace, nodding once in a while but showing little else. To anyone else she looked flawless, eternal, untouched. But Daniel knew the truth now. He remembered Lyra's trembling words, "We are her shadows. When she cannot cry, we weep. When she must smile, we hide the pain she cannot show." And he remembered the moment in the garden when Lyra had whispered, "Perhaps strength is sharing sorrow." Daniel's heart beat faster. He could not forget. And though he was only one man, only one human among thousands in this palace, he felt he must do something. When the official talks ended, the human ambassadors bowed deeply and prepared to leave. But Daniel did not step back. Instead, he raised his voice. "Your Majesty," he said. The hall grew quiet. Every Solari turned their heads. Even the humans stared at him in alarm. This was not planned. The Queen's golden eyes shifted to him, steady and unreadable. "Yes, Captain Hale?" she said in her clear, calm voice. Daniel bowed respectfully, then spoke. "Forgive me for speaking outside of order. I am not an ambassador, nor do I carry the authority of treaties. I am only an explorer, a simple man, but I wish to speak not of trade or politics, but of something else, something human." The advisors whispered among themselves. Some Solari guards shifted, uncertain, yet the Queen lifted her hand and silence returned. "Very well, speak." Daniel drew in a breath. His heart raced, but his voice was steady. "On my world we have had many leaders. Some were strong in battle, some wise in council, but many carried a heavy burden, the belief that they must appear perfect. They hid their fears, their sorrow, their doubts. They wore masks of stone, and because of this they broke inside. Some lost themselves, Some lost their people's trust, all because they believed that to show their heart was weakness. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. And you believe it is different for your kind? Yes, Daniel said firmly. We learned, sometimes painfully, that true strength is not the silence of sorrow but the sharing of it. A leader who pretends to feel nothing becomes distant. But a leader who dares to show truth even in small ways inspires trust. For people do not follow perfection. They follow what is real. The hall was utterly still. The Solari advisors looked troubled. Some frowned, others exchanged uncertain glances. Yet the queen's gaze never left Daniel. You speak boldly, she said. Do you mean to say that to reveal sorrow is a kind of power? Daniel nodded. Yes, your majesty. On earth we say that a burden shared becomes lighter. Even a crown can rest easier if the heart beneath it is not alone. For a long moment the queen did not answer. Her golden eyes shone like sunlight on water, unreadable. Then she asked softly, and what of hope? Would showing sorrow not break the hope of those who depend on their ruler? Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. Hope is not born from pretending. Hope is born from truth. If your people knew that you too feel as they feel, that you too carry fears and dreams, would they not love you more? Would they not see themselves in you? Not only their queen, but their kin? Whispers filled the hall again. Some Solari looked shocked, even angry. But others, guards, attendants, even one advisor, looked thoughtful. At the edge of the throne, Daniel noticed Lyra. She stood with the other maids, her face calm as ever. But her eyes were wide with quiet wonder. The queen raised her hand once more and silence fell. She rose slowly from her throne, the golden light catching on her silver robe. Stepping forward, she descended the steps until she stood near Daniel. The hall seemed to hold its breath. You are human, she said softly. Your kind has always been strange to us, bold, reckless, curious, and yet, perhaps also wise. Her eyes, bright as suns, searched his face. Do you truly believe what you say? That to show sorrow is not weakness, but strength? Daniel met her gaze without fear. Yes, your majesty, with all my heart. For the first time since he had entered the palace, Daniel saw something change in the queen's expression. A shadow passed across her eyes, then softened. Her lips trembled just slightly, and then a single tear slid down her cheek. Gasps filled the hall. The advisors looked shocked beyond words. The guards shifted uneasily, but Daniel stood still, watching in silence. The queen did not hide the tear. She let it fall, and in that small, quiet moment, the palace seemed to grow warmer, as if the walls themselves sighed with relief. I have carried the crown for many years, the queen said softly. Her voice different now, not the flawless tone of a ruler, but the gentle voice of a person. I have hidden much. I have given my silence to those who serve me. And yet here you stand, a stranger from a distant star, telling me that I need not hide, that I may be seen. Her gaze shifted briefly to Lyra, whose golden eyes shone with unspoken emotion. Perhaps, the queen whispered, your kind carries a wisdom we had forgotten. Daniel bowed deeply, but his heart felt light. He had not broken the queen. He had helped her take the first step toward freedom. The advisors quickly tried to recover, some speaking of tradition, others warning of danger. But the queen lifted her hand, silencing them again. This human has spoken truth, she declared. Strength is not silence alone. It is also the courage to share. From this day I will not pretend to be untouchable. I will not let my servants carry what is mine alone. I remain your queen, but I remain also myself. The hall was silent again, but this time it was a silence filled with awe. Daniel stepped back, his duty done. He knew this moment was only the beginning.
Change would not come easily.
The advisors would resist, traditions would push back, but the seed was planted. Later that night, as Daniel returned to his chamber, Lyra appeared in the corridor. She looked at him with shining eyes. You spoke what no one dared, she whispered, and she listened. You gave her courage. You gave us hope. Daniel smiled gently. No, you gave her courage first when you trusted me. I only spoke what you already carried in your heart. For the first time, Lyra's smile was not fragile but bright. Then perhaps together we have changed something greater than ourselves. Daniel nodded, feeling a deep peace. Perhaps we have. That night he wrote in his log. Today, in the hall of the Solari queen, a tear fell. Not from her maid, not from her shadow, but from her own eyes. It was the smallest thing and yet the greatest. For in that tear I saw a queen become not only a ruler but a person, and in that person I saw hope for an empire. Daniel closed the log, knowing the journey was not yet done, but his heart was steady. He had spoken the morning after the queen's first tear, the palace felt different. It was not the grand architecture that had changed, nor the floating gardens that shimmered in the sunlight. It was something smaller, quieter, yet far more powerful. The air felt lighter. Captain Daniel Hale walked through the palace halls with a calm heart. The previous day had been extraordinary, but now he observed something even more remarkable. Guards, attendants, and maids moved with a gentle confidence, not the rigid perfection of before. He found Lyra again in the quiet garden hall, tending to one of the glowing floating plants. She looked up and smiled. This time the smile was not fragile. It was steady, warm, and genuine. "You came early," Daniel said. Lyra laughed softly, a sound like the rustle of leaves in a summer breeze. "I could not sleep. Everything feels different. Even the walls seem lighter." Daniel nodded. "Yes. Change begins quietly in the hearts of people." Lyra glanced at him with shining eyes. "Yesterday, you spoke, and she listened. The queen, our queen, allowed herself to feel, to be seen. Can you understand what that means to us?" "I think I do," Daniel said gently. "It is more than a gesture. It is freedom." Lyra picked up a floating flower, holding it delicately. "For years we carried her sorrow. Every tear, every doubt, every fear. It was ours but not ours now. I think we may share it with her, together, not alone." Daniel smiled. "That is how humans live too. We share burdens, we lean on each other. It makes life lighter." The two of them walked quietly through the palace corridors. Daniel noticed other maids smiling softly at each other, a small change that did not go unnoticed. Even the queen's guards, who had always seemed like statues of discipline, moved with ease, not stiffness. Later that day, Daniel was invited to a private audience with the queen. She greeted him with the same calm elegance, yet something in her eyes had changed. They held warmth, a spark of trust, and a glimmer of relief. "You are awake early," Daniel said with a small bow. "I could not sleep either," the queen replied. Her voice was softer than before, more human. "Your words yesterday, they carried truth. I have not felt such freedom in decades. The weight of the crown is still heavy, but now, I know I am not alone." Daniel took a careful breath. "You are never truly alone, Your Majesty, and you need not hide what you feel. That is strength, not weakness." The queen smiled faintly, a real smile that lit her eyes. "Perhaps my people will learn this as well. Perhaps my maids and even my advisors can see that a queen is not only a ruler but also human." Her gaze shifted briefly to Lyra, who stood quietly by the door. Lyra's eyes shone with quiet pride and relief. She had carried the queen's sorrow for so long, and now she could see hope, not only for herself but for the one she served. "That human of yours," the queen said, looking at Daniel with calm amusement, "has reminded me that even the strongest flame can warm itself without burning out." Daniel bowed again, feeling a deep humility. "I am honored, Your Majesty. But it was not I who brought change. It was your courage to accept it." The queen nodded, and for the first time she allowed herself a small, genuine laugh. The sound was like sunlight spilling across a calm sea. Daniel felt a rush of joy, seeing the queen not as an untouchable figure, but as someone real, someone who could lead with both power and heart. Over the next days, subtle changes began to ripple through the palace. The maids moved more freely, no longer hiding behind perfect postures. Lyra laughed quietly with her fellow attendants, and sometimes she caught Daniel watching and smiled, her eyes full of life. The queen, while still regal, allowed herself to show emotion openly in small ways. She asked questions, she smiled at jokes, and occasionally, she let a tear fall when she thought no one was watching. Though Daniel and Lyra both knew she was no longer entirely alone in her feelings, even the advisors began to notice. At first, some resisted clinging to old tradition, but over time they realized that the empire remained strong, even as the queen allowed herself to be seen. Her people did not lose faith. They followed her more faithfully, inspired not only by her power but by her honesty. One afternoon, Daniel and Lyra walked through the garden together. The floating flowers glowed softly, reflecting the colors of the sky. Do you see it? Lyra asked. The change? It is small, but it is real. I can feel it in every corner of the palace. Daniel nodded. Yes, small changes grow into great ones. And it started with a single truth. Lyra's eyes were bright. You reminded us all that the Queen is not a machine or a statue. She is a person, and we are not shadows anymore. We are her allies, her friends. Daniel smiled, feeling the weight of the journey lift from his own shoulders. Humanity has a gift, he said softly. We may not have your technology, your long lives, or your empire, but we know this. A heart shared is a heart strengthened. Lyra looked at him with quiet admiration. And you reminded us of that. That night, Daniel wrote his final entry in his log before leaving the Solari Palace. I came to the Solari Empire as a visitor, a human explorer. I expected to learn about technology, culture, and diplomacy. Instead, I learned about the heart, the hidden strength behind a crown. I saw a queen who had been alone in her perfection, a maid who carried sorrow too heavy for one life and the power of a simple human truth. Strength is not in hiding pain, strength is in sharing it, and in that truth even empires can shine brighter. He paused, gazing out at the glowing city below. In the heart of a queen I found sorrow, in the heart of a maid I found courage, and in a human voice I found hope for two worlds. The next morning Daniel departed the palace. As his ship lifted from the Solari capital, he looked down at the floating gardens and crystal towers. He knew he would never forget the golden eyes of Lyra, or the warm, quiet strength of the queen who had dared to feel. The empire continued, strong as ever. But now, it had something new. Honesty, trust, and the courage to carry not just a crown but a heart. Daniel smiled, feeling both humble and proud. Humanity had given something more valuable than treaties, more valuable than knowledge of stars. They had given a gift the Solari had forgotten, the courage to share the heart, to feel and to be seen. As the ship sailed into the vast galaxy, Daniel knew that even small acts could ripple across worlds. And perhaps, in some distant future, the lesson of the Solari Queen and her maid would travel beyond the stars, a story of strength, courage, and the simple, enduring power of being human.